Welcome to Rich Baker and Friends. My name is Rich Baker. My friend today is Lauren Peacock, author, producer, performer, just general all-around badass, I would say. Lauren, thanks for being on my show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
The performer part, but we'll go with writer-producer.
You've performed. I've seen you perform.
I know.
There is video evidence of you performing.
Oh, no, let's not bring that out. No, I would go with maybe performer back in the day, but, I think now it's just more testing out material. But
Former
performer. I like that.
Performer in hibernation?
Yeah, probably. I think we're all hibernating right now.
Well, oh, look at you. You got LaCroix. Good for you.
I know. This is like my drink of choice. A friend of mine, she's a writer. She actually drew for the book like a sketch of the dog and myself and a piece of cheese. She, back in the day, drew like a Barbie of me with a side piece of LaCroix. That was my my, I guess, accessory that came with the doll. It was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If I was buying the Lauren Peacock Barbie, I think the LaCroix would be the perfect little accessory to go along with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have one with me all the time.
Nice. Yeah. So you are you're a published author. You got a book out there. People can read it. I feel like if people are looking for a distraction right now, books. I feel like books, I don't know, at least in my lifetime, have been kind of a fringe thing. Very, very few people I know actively do a lot of reading in their spare time, but books are awesome. And your book is it's such an easy to get your head around, it's very accessible. It's not too heady or over the top. It's just here's just some really cool stories. So I'm sure you've talked about this a million times. It's been out, but why don't we go into the where did the idea come from? When did you go, oh, this is actually going to be a thing?
It started, obviously it's on the cover. I actually don't even think I have I do. I'll just jump up real quick and grab a book with the cover and show you.
Yeah. I'm also going to superimpose, in editing, I'll put a little thing right here to show them the cover as well.
But I've got I figured, I don't even know why I didn't have this. But yeah, on the cover it says, divorce. So obviously we'll, let that out of the bag. But it started right when I got divorced. And, when you kind of get yourself, you pick yourself back up and you kind of start dating. This Tinder world and this internet dating all started when I was married. So I didn't know, because when, I had met, my husband back when internet dating was, Match or eHarmony.
Yeah, and it was still pretty fringe, but it was kind of internet dating,
Yeah, you were oh, I don't know about this, It
was still what the weirdos were doing.
Right, stranger danger and things like that. Are you sure that guy's legit? So then when, I was married and with someone for so long, you then come out to this world and everybody's talking about this Tinder. And I don't even think Bumble had come around yet. I think it was straight Tinder was the thing.
Yeah, it was the leader. It was the first one.
Yeah. So I got on Tinder and tried to figure it out. And of course, you get frustrated because, we're millennials and what is this? Because
what is this thing?
Well, we're still stuck in that whole, we want to participate, but we're also kind of skeptical. I think that's millennials in general. We're it's the same with TikTok. I just signed up for TikTok yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And it took me a minute. I don't know. Do you have one?
I've never been on TikTok. I have seen, I've seen recreations of TikTok on Instagram. That's about as far as I know.
So it's almost like I boycott something, because I'm everybody, I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure it out. Everybody's doing it. Same with Snapchat. I still don't have, I had one, then I deleted it, and then I had one, then I deleted it. Kind of like Tinder. I had one, and then I deleted it, and then I had one, and then I deleted it, because I get fed up with it.
Sure.
So I had a Tinder. I was swiping. I was going on some dates. after the divorce. And so that's and I started, telling my friends about these stories. And sometimes friends of mine that were in other states, we didn't, I couldn't just pick up the phone and call them because everybody has lives. So I would write them an email.
Oh, back in the time when we had lives, remember that?
Yeah, right? When you actually have things to do every day and places to go.
Sounds like a myth.
And happy hours to go to with your friends. So I would write an email or whatever. And then I was like, well, I'll just do a little blog so that way everybody can just go and I don't have to write all these separate emails. And so it kind of started as that. And then, but yeah, it would be like I'd get together happy hour with my local friends and, tell them about this date with this guy that was shorter than me and I'm 5'2", and, and, so then I didn't know he was that short because he lied on his Tinder profile. So I show up in wedges. So it's stuff like that. And then, and so I, writing it was very therapeutic and stuff like that. And then, someone said, why don't you turn this into a book? And I said, I should. And Tucker Max's I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell was popular, years before. And I, stylistically was very much the same because I was just writing stories.
Right, yeah. So just to clarify for everyone, so your book is basically a collection of anecdotes that, when you take the whole story, really does tell a story, but individually you could read any story and not necessarily, you could read them out of order and still just be a self-contained story, or you could read the whole book and get your journey.
Yes, and there is a start to finish. I mean, there are some things in some of the stories that reference things because the first couple of chapters I do talk about growing up and some childhood things that I do reference later.
Yeah.
But there are obviously some dating stories and things that if you just wanted to read, it wouldn't be that hard to follow. If you just wanted to pick it up. But yeah, and then so I started writing it, and then ended up moving to LA, and had a great experience and reason to move out to LA, and then that's kind of when I got very serious about it, and that's when I met you. So, and then things kind of all came together, and, I took your class, and then, between that class and obviously the stand-up class, it really made me say, okay, how am I going to move forward really making this happen? Because you can have a ton of ideas, but I think it's the figuring out the structure of the book and the real direction of the book, to kind of get the shape of the book, I think was kind of what I was trying to do, but because I'd never written a book, it's new. Because film and entertainment is so screenwriting is so different than writing a book creatively.
Oh yeah,
it's
big
just
time, yeah.
Your development and the creative mind is it's different.
Yeah. So just to let people, so the class you took of mine was an intro to improv class. It was an Improv 1 class. And if I recall correctly, you weren't even looking to take an improv class. It was just that you wanted to take a class at Second City, and they had some kind of requirement that you take Improv 1 or something like that. Is that?
Yeah. So I wanted to take the stand-up class, because the stand-up class, I've always liked stand-up. I've respect comedians very much so. And the stand-up class was kind of connected to the storytelling class that I wanted to take. And the storytelling class I wanted to take because I wanted to workshop some of these stories.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but just to kind of see, am I going in the right direction with this? And in order to take the storytelling class, I had to take the stand-up class. In order to take the stand-up class, I had to take an improv class. So I was like, okay. But I was determined to make this happen.
Yeah.
So the improv class, there was one weekend where you could do the intensive and get it done all in one weekend. And it happened to be 4th of July weekend. And I was like, well, I just moved to LA maybe 6 months before. I knew people in the industry, some people, because, and I was working on a project at the time we were in development, but I was like, okay, well, I have some time, but in between some stuff, I was like, so I'm just going to knock it out this weekend. So yeah. That class, we had a great group.
Yeah.
Just happened to take that class.
Yeah, and improv's always one of those funny things because some people get an improv class just because they know they want to be improvisers and they want to do it, and then some people want to do it just to try something new, and then some people are like, "I'm just taking this to get to something else." Oh, hey, this is a transformative experience in different ways.
And then there's me asking all the questions that like had that like I had a point to the question, but it was like it wasn't the point to become an improver. It was like I just want to know all these answers. It was. I mean,
Well, because I think this is not a miscategorization, but tell me if I'm accurate. Like you're always curious.
yeah,
Like whenever you're in any situation, I think you and I have a lot in common of like we just want to know, like, even if it's not something that particularly something we want to do, just like how does that work and what's going on here, and you're just very curious mind, which I think makes for great writers, in general.
yeah. And I think it's that storytelling aspect. So figuring out in the class like what was the point of this and what was the point of that, because it's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what you do in a screenplay. That's what you do in a story. That's what you do on stage. And that's what a comedian does too when they're on stage. I mean, you see a lot of them, they start the show a certain way and then you see them end on that one thing at the end. And it's so beautiful when it happens that way.
Yeah. I think my favorite, and I think we've talked about him before, Mike Birbiglia, I think is just the master at just like giving you a whole show where it's like a bunch of different stories, but they're all connected in this way. And then by the end, you're like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
beautiful. So were you obviously you read Tucker Max's I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. Were you an avid reader, prior to writing a book?
I liked memoirs, specifically. I mean, it could be I hate saying celebrity memoirs. And I personally, I think we have to refer in general to, I mean, the public refers to them as celebrity. I prefer to refer to them as talent because when I'm working on set, they're talent. They're just people.
Yeah.
I really don't like using the word celebrity, but in this case, it's a celebrity memoir.
Sure.
And I just liked reading all different types. I really liked Rob Lowe's. I thought
his was great.
His was really great and open and honest. And I felt his tone was different than some of the others, like Tori Spelling's. I felt like she was still trying to play to the audience, where I felt like his was, I'm just telling you like it is, and it is what it is. So I think some of the tones are, I like, and Ellen DeGeneres' hers, was funny, and it was hers style.
Was basically her stand-up, right?
Yeah, it was basically you reading her stand-up.
And that used to be the model for, like, because I remember growing up, like, I read George Carlin's book, and I read a bunch of books, but I also watched all their stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is just their stand-up in page form, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But like you, I'm with you. Like, I like the autobiographies or memoirs that like really dive into like the deep, like let's get some revealing, let's get in the nitty gritty kind of stuff.
Right. So I've always enjoyed reading their stories and like you, reading more about their lives off screen or off stage.
Yeah.
And in general, like, I mean, for school, there were certain books in English class I really liked and others you didn't. I mean, some you connect with and some you don't. And then some you read later again and you're like, oh, I hated that in high school, but I really like that now. So I think in general, as a reader, should I read more? Sure.
We all probably should.
Yeah, we all should. Probably be a little bit more educated in general as opposed to just pop culture driven. But I think in the industry of entertainment, our lives are so dependent on what we need to know about with pop culture that's what we kind of are saturated with. So, I mean, I'm choosing to read different things now. Am I reading every day? No. But am I trying to read a few things a week? Sure.
Nice. Well, it's so hard nowadays because like we're reading constantly, with articles and, social media posts and all. I mean, we're always reading, but we're reading these very
Crap.
short form
We're reading
kind of
crap.
things.
I mean,
A lot of times it's crap. Yeah.
it's garbage. I mean, we're reading something on the LA Times, and then we're reading something on BuzzFeed, and then we're reading contradicting stuff.
Sure.
Which is made by our people. We've got to support our people because they make a living too. I mean, I know some writers over at certain outlets of these, and they're good people, but they're just doing their job too.
And I don't want to, so I highly recommend anyone who's interested in personal storytelling. I equate a lot of your stories to me. It's kind of like a David Sedaris kind of feel to it. And it's like you wind up in these situations and like, wait, what? How did you get there? And you just got a really funny way of describing it and just telling us about these, little circumstances that have happened to you over the time.
Sometimes, and one of the ones that's public right now, so we can talk about it because I did it on, it's on Sway Media's website. Nice. I wrote an article for them, is Kansas and the Fire Pit.
Yes.
And you're familiar with that because you were kind enough to let me kind of workshop that story with you a little bit.
I'm honored that I was able to help you with that.
No, that was so kind. And for those of you that don't know, Rich was such a great mentor to me when I was kind of starting off, in LA and, helping me kind of get to know the lay of the land. And he was one of the reasons why when I thought about leaving, he was kind of somebody that I was like, if I can meet people like Rich, then I can meet other people like that too.
Oh, shucks. You started with your nice words.
No, but it's very true because there are a lot of people that, it wasn't about more of a career situation. It was more about, I really value relationships and friendships. And LA is such a tough town. And I knew that going in. That's why I came in very indifferent about it. Like I didn't love it and I didn't hate it. But I was like, if I don't love it and I don't hate it, I can leave at any time and just come back out like I've been doing for so many years. Like I don't have to live here. But I was like, if there's people like Rich,
oh my God.
Wow. No, and it's true. If there's people like Rich and people like one other person I won't mention, I'm like, then there has to be others. And that's the thing I think people don't realize when they leave LA too soon is like, you just have to find them. They're people that are there.
Yeah.
Like, and you know this, you've been here longer than me. Like you have to find them. They are there. It's just, it may not be directly in entertainment. Cause like it's, our industry is tough. So you sometimes have to look elsewhere. And that's what I did. I looked in other places and then it gives you an entertainment break. But anyway, Kansas and the Fire Pit. This is a story that like it's so embarrassing that you think, how can this person keep going and like, who would do that? Like, who would be taking these in steps? Like, don't you see? Like, you're just.
Well, let's give a little context, right? So when you say Kansas, often most of the book, whenever you don't use real names, you give nicknames, and it's often like the place, right? So like Kansas, Tennessee, different things like that. So Kansas is the name of a guy. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I nickname all my love interests.
Yeah.
So one's name is Gator. That's not a place, but he got a nickname. His nickname is Gator.
But we get it. We get where he's from.
And so so Kansas. It's a great story. It had to do with gym. And
constructing a fire pit.
I wanted this, I had this fire pit project and I kind of, thought it would get him to like me. And I wrote him a poem. I was so desperate. And that didn't work either. Like there was just so many steps that I kept going and going and going. And you just think like, how is someone like looking back? I'm like, if I was watching this person on screen on Netflix, I would just be cringing, saying this is like a total like disaster, and she's just, there's like, what about the nice guy standing over here in the corner? Like, you just, but it makes for a great story, and there's a lesson learned, and you see it in the story and then later in the book, but there's obviously more funny moments that go with that, and those are the things, like, that's not just the only one, because I don't learn the first time.
Well, and yeah, but I mean, isn't that such a wonderfully human thing? It's like, I feel that very, very few people, if any, can be in a situation and see it from that 10,000-foot view.
No.
So like, you're in it, and then you're just doing the best you can, and then later you go, oh, I see what that was, or who I was, or what I was doing. And like, I know you throw the term embarrassed, and that's pretty common. They're like, oh, that was so embarrassing, but like, is it embarrassing, or is it just part of the human?
Learning.
Yeah, it's part of the experience we have, right?
I mean, I've never been one for like big regrets, because I always try and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Or I try and make a funny moment out of it.
Sure.
So, I mean, I feel like if you're not, I mean, but that's my personality.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, that didn't work. So, like, try something else. Or the next situation, you've learned well, or maybe you haven't learned, but you try a different tactic and embarrass yourself another way. But, it's not really embarrassing. I mean, eventually you think you come to a point, or I hope people come to a point, their rock bottom or whatever it is, of a growing moment.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, clearly it's me. Like, if this hasn't worked out 10 times, it's me.
Wait, what's the common denominator? Oh.
Right. So, and I think a lot of these funny stories, and some of them didn't make it into the book. One of my favorites that you and I worked out, Sleepovers and Poop.
Yep.
That got cut. And just to give, I'll talk about this. This might get put in the second book.
Oh, nice.
I started it, but Sleepovers and Poop, which Rich and I workshopped, was this after my divorce. It was, this guy came over. He was way younger than me. And by way younger, I mean, we went to the same high school. I did not know it. And when I was graduating, he was probably learning what he had underneath his,
Yeah, so we're talking like 7, 8 years probably, yeah.
Yeah, he was learning about his body probably. And
all right.
And is this a
you can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Say whatever you want.
So anyway, later in life, when we connect, because I've never heard of this guy, but we know a lot of people in common. He was so nice. He came over and he cooked me dinner, because he spent every summer in Italy with his grandmother, because that's just beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, he asked me to help him with his, homework, because he's in college, by the way. College. This is not a Monica Keller situation.
That's hot.
In college.
That's hot. Hey, you want to help me with my homework? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, and what he cooked me was something that didn't sit well with my stomach, even though it tasted great. And, there was a moment of embarrassment, and there's other stuff in there that I don't want to ruin it in case we put it back in. But it was stories like that where, like, those are moments where you're just like, okay, here's this great younger guy over at my house cooking me a great meal. And like, how adult is he, right? Go to Italy and all this kind of stuff. And he's in my house. And now I have the trots, and it's totally like ruining it's things that you just can't plan or prepare for, it's life. And, but, that didn't really go anywhere. So, I mean,
I just, we don't use the trots near enough in life. Got the trots.
I mean, and that's another thing. I my bathroom humor is probably not, I mean, women, I mean, but that comes from my biological family. I mean, my sisters, we make, oh, we should, I mean, we're like brothers. We're like boys. We make very bad bathroom humor jokes, and we're just
Yeah.
very appropriate when we all get together.
Nice. I think it's great. So prior to LA, you were in the Atlanta market. You're doing your thing and you're producing. How does one get into, like, obviously I think everyone kind of, whether you're in the industry or not, kind of gets, oh, if you're in LA or New York, you know, or London or different places, it's easy. But, you know, how did you like break into the idea of into the market basically of Atlanta and do your thing? Because you've done a lot of stuff. You had a list of pretty impressive accomplishments in Atlanta. How did that come about?
Well, the Atlanta thing, I had moved up there, kind of wanted a fresh start from Florida and the divorce. So I'd moved up there and, you know, knew that the market in Atlanta was kind of a big deal. To be honest with you, didn't know, I mean, had friends, you know, from childhood and stuff, but didn't really have any contacts as far as, you know, I mean, I probably had more contacts in LA than I did in Atlanta.
Wow.
Because I'd worked in LA.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to Atlanta and it was basically, you know, reaching out. I mean, kind of what you do, you know, out here, you know, you just start reaching out to people. But it was interesting because I lived in a high rise in Midtown, and I happened to get on an elevator with a gentleman, and we got off on the same floor, and we happened to be neighbors. And he was in like events, and I was like, oh, I'm in entertainment. And we just kind of struck up a conversation, and he invited me in for a glass of wine, and we just kind of talked. And from there, we kind of created this show, Atlanta's a Drag. And then we shot a pilot, and then, you know, it kind of grew. So it was just kind of a random elevator talk of just like, oh, what are you into and what am I into? And at that time, I was actually working with an actor out here in LA on something that I had already, it's a script I own that we were workshopping, that we were going to go in development for. And so I was already going to be flying out here to kind of meet with him and all that kind of stuff. And so, and then the Atlanta's a Drag thing came about. So it was weird because it was kind of like my almost transition into LA anyway, but I stayed behind in Atlanta to do Atlanta's a Drag. And then a couple other things came up in Atlanta because of that. So it was kind of weird because it was like, should I leave Atlanta? But, you know, got this stuff kind of brewing in LA. And, but yeah, Atlanta's a Drag was great. We got some great feedback, great notes, then kind of turned it around and re-released it. Ended up getting some attention in London, you know, still kind of wondering, you know, up in the air. I mean, as you know, to sell any show is a very difficult thing. I think people think all the time, oh, if you get money and you make something, that's the easiest thing because our show's great. Why? There's so many platforms. Why won't anybody want to buy it?
Makes sense.
The hardest thing is just getting the funding. But no, the hardest thing is actually selling it. Finding money can be pretty easy when you know enough people, but it's selling a show that's very difficult. But you know, we ended up having a great working relationship, this guy in Atlanta and I, and you know, we went on to do other things, and now he's doing other things, and that's great. And yeah, and that's I mean, Atlanta ended up being a good market for a little while. I still go back and shoot things there, still have an office, still have a crew, but I think LA for now, because I've done so much recently, it's kept me here. But when I'm needed, I absolutely go back to Atlanta. There's some great people, and I have some great crew I really like.
That's awesome. What if anything is happening in your world, like we're quarantined right now. You know, obviously no one's on set. Is there anything happening, or is everyone just like, we're just putting a pin in this until who knows when?
Everybody I know is halted.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have friends on network shows. They did a couple of things. They, you know, I guess wrapped, or not wrapped, but paused.
Mm-hmm.
And they're halted, and people are saying May. I don't know if May is going to be. I was in development on a show before this started. Very early stages of development. We were supposed to go into pre-production in May because we were supposed to shoot in June, and kind of the rest of the summer into fall. But as of now, I don't know. I
Sure.
guess, you know, I mean, our show is still a go. I just don't know the timing on it. So I think everybody is waiting. I don't think the networks, from what I've heard, have canned shows because they know that people are going to need content.
Sure.
Because everybody's watching everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're gonna all be caught up.
right. Well, I mean, I'm caught up on a lot of things. I'm waiting for, I mean, because I'm always caught up on things. Let's be real. Like, I watch if I'm not working, I am watching things because my friends either make shows or, you know, but it's my industry. So I just watch stuff, you know?
Sure.
I'm all caught up, or I hate to say it, or it's stuff that I'm just not into. And
Yeah.
and that's like Netflix bangs out so many movies, but lately I feel like Netflix is turning, or shows, they're turning out stuff that's just not good. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's good and a lot of stuff that's just not good. Like,
Right.
some of these movies I feel like I'm sure are fine, but they're not for me. They're for a younger audience.
Yeah. And you're not into I mean, none of us are into every genre, right? There's always some genres out there that is like, oh, I'm never going to look at that. It's just not my thing.
Right. I'm more into crime and suspense and murder, you know?
Murder.
I love murder. Like, I do. And you know what? It took me a minute to watch the Tiger King thing. I think I was like one of the last people to actually get on that bandwagon. But when I did, I was like, oh, I get it. This is a, you know, great show. Yeah. And the producers did everything they were supposed to do. Like, oh, okay. Everything. I believe. I don't know. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. What when you say what they were supposed to, like, what does that mean?
They got all the answers from the cast.
Right, yeah.
They put everybody in the position they needed to put them in order to, like, they asked all the right questions.
Gotcha.
They and the editors, like, got all the footage that, like, they made a great show because they made it interesting. They made it, you know, trending.
Yeah.
They did what they needed to do to make that thing very popular.
The best I've heard so far, someone described it as the redneck Game of Thrones, which I was like, I can get behind that, because I'm not a big, I don't watch a ton of reality TV, hardly at all, and I'm really not super into true crime, so I just did it literally because everyone was doing it. I was like, all right, everyone's jumping off a bridge, I'll jump off too. But it's one of those types of shows that even if it's not your genre, you're like, I got it. These people are they're circus. Like, it's almost like going to the circus freaks of, like, you're a real person. Okay, cool.
So a friend of mine in England said that this is what people in England think of Americans before they actually come to America. Before they visit America, this is what they think all Americans are like. Mm-hmm. Is Joe Exotic, basically.
Yeah. We all just run our own private zoos filled with tigers. That's every American.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? You know, and you grew up in Florida. Where did you ever visit any of these, like, private zoos, big cat places?
So in West Palm Beach, the Lion Country Safari is 30 minutes from where I
Okay.
grew up. So yeah, that was a popular place. And look, in Florida, things are weird. We all know, like, we are not surprised by anything in Florida. Like, we're not, it's just people, like, if we saw a Joe Exotic in Florida, like, growing up, like, we don't think anything of it. Like, that,
Yeah.
like, people are, it's just, it's Florida. Like, we know there's just different type of people. And honestly, it's kind of like, there is a meme I've seen, because I'm in a Florida group,
Mm-hmm.
where they've said people have been, or Floridians have been training for this pandemic their entire lives because of hurricane season.
Sure.
So, like, before, like, it all in all is this virus is not funny. So I want to make sure everybody knows I'm not trying to make any jokes about what's going on.
That said, we can bring some levity to the situation.
Right. But I do want to say, like, about a week before we had the stay-at-home order in California, I felt like something wasn't right. Like, I just, something didn't feel right. The virus was kind of being talked about a little bit more on TV. And I went to Trader Joe's and I just got a bunch of stuff. And the shelves were still full and stuff like that.
Yeah, this was before anything.
Stop. Sorry, the dog is being.
No, Izzy.
Yeah. So I went and just got a bunch of stuff. And would I call it hoarding? No, I didn't buy like 3 things of toilet paper and all of that. No.
Sure.
But I got enough stuff that I knew I wouldn't have to go back to the store for, 10 days or 2 weeks if I had to, stuff to throw in the freezer, fresh stuff, whatever.
Sure.
Because there was just something in the air that said, this might be a little bit more serious than you think.
Your Floridian spidey sense kind of went off a little bit.
And sure enough, by like the weekend, this whole thing was all over the news. We hadn't gone into stay-at-home, but everything was all over the news.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm so glad. And it's true. Like, Floridians, it's because it's like the stages of a hurricane. If it's like, a category 1, no one cares. Even if it's a category 2, still no one cares. But when you're teetering on that category 3 line, you're like, I should probably go get some cases of water. And but the people that go at a category 1, they're the ones laughing at the people that wait until the category 3, because they're like, you should have just gone at the category 1, even if it never got to a category 3, and then you just have a bunch of water for the rest of the month.
Sure, yeah. Like, as long as you have the space, why not load up with some canned goods and whatnot?
Right. Well, I'll just put it in my living room, and you can just walk over it,
Yeah, who cares, right?
Free water, Don't put the house. But yeah, I mean, Florida was a great place, as far as like the weather, activities growing up that, like, boating, for example, like, kids at 12 can get a boating license.
Oh, wow.
And you can just go drive a boat. And growing
at 12?
Yeah. So I moved at 12 from Atlanta to Florida. And I didn't know that, like, when I got there, like, friends of mine that were, I guess, already 12 or 13, maybe it was 13, but either way, we were on that line.
Yeah.
Like, they could go out and take the boat, and it was normal. And I'm like, and my parents were like, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
But kids growing up, it's like their older siblings did it. Like, they got to do it. It was just kind of trickled down, like driving a car. You just knew at 13 you'd get your boater's license.
Wow.
And I was like,
I have no idea.
People have boats. Like, your kid just, like, you just get a boat. Like, it was just a different thing. Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, like, even though my dad had a fishing boat, I didn't know kids' parents got them a little like skiff or something, like that was a thing. Like, so they had sandbar parties and it's crazy. But it's Florida, so you can't, I mean, it's Florida.
Yeah. Because, like, I'd been to Florida, I don't know, a handful of times or whatnot, but I just didn't really get the memo, I guess, that Florida was the weird
Crazy
cousin.
state?
Was the what?
Was the crazy state?
Yeah, I didn't understand. And one of the first shows I did when I moved to LA was called Hell County, Florida, and the premise was that Satan was alive and well in Florida, and that every article that was like Florida man does this or Florida woman does this were really just demons in Satan's possession going out and doing stuff. And I was like, oh, that's funny, but I didn't understand at the time that was like based on like real news. And then I just kind of opened my eyes. It's like, what? How did Florida get so? Because it's the South, but it's not the South, and like. Miami's its totally own thing, and then the Keys are their own thing. And like Florida's kind of, it's got both coasts, it's got the Gulf and the Atlantic side, and it's just like it's an interesting state.
Own states almost. What were you
Yeah.
gonna say? It's the weird cousin of what?
Just like of all the 50 states, it's the one that we're like, Florida's over there, like yeah, and I don't think I got that memo growing up, but like has that always been the case? Like, were you aware of that when you first moved there?
No. Because growing up, before we moved, we would go down to Fort Lauderdale some, and I didn't spend a lot of time in Fort Lauderdale, other than like the purpose we would go to visit like a friend or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Jacksonville, where we had family. So like North Florida, I was familiar with, but North Florida is so close to Georgia. I mean, it's only at like 45 minutes from the state line, and my grandparents lived there. So I spent a lot of time at their house. Like, we didn't go out to eat or anything like that very much. So it was basically spent at my grandparents' and my aunt and uncle's house. There wasn't a lot of, I mean, I was little, so there wasn't a lot of activity time outside of the home. So yeah, I mean, there wasn't, and like I went to Disney a couple times, but it's Disney. I mean, like, you don't get a
that's its own little thing.
Yeah. So it wasn't until like going, and I mean, you're living in like, you're in Palm Beach County. I mean, you're in what is now Trump land, basically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I mean, you're in Palm Beach County where it's a very wealthy town. I mean, I came from, I talk about it in the book. I grew up in a very fortunate environment, but it was very different in Georgia as opposed to Florida. Like, it was more conservative in Georgia as opposed to in Florida, where, the private school that I went to in Florida, kids were getting BMWs for their birthday.
Wow.
Or like a Louis Vuitton bag. And bringing it to school and stuff like that. Like, that would never happen. And that's great. Like, that's great that they were able to get that. And there's good on them. But like, it was culture shock in the sense that like in Georgia, my friends were of all different backgrounds, like in the sense of that wasn't a thing. So to come down to Florida and like everybody was getting this kind of stuff, it was like that was just the norm.
Yeah.
I guess it would be like if somebody moved to Beverly Hills, that type of environment, So it was interesting because like, even though, yes, if that's something I wanted, like, I'm sure. Can you stop that? Can you stop it?
What is he doing?
Can you stop? She hears something outside and she's just.
Oh, no good. No good.
But I mean, and it's something where it's just, hey, knock it off. Knock it off. It's something that like looking back, you're like, yes. And I mean, I say this in the book, I was spoiled, as a kid. And, now I've always been appreciative of everything. Sure. And I think it's something that like you you look at different situations, and everybody looks at their life, and I'm sure looks at things, and reflects on things. And that's, I think that's what you do when you get older. You look back and you think about, psychologically what's affected you and what hasn't. And I think being the age that I am and growing up an only child and growing up just in the, being around a lot of adults. And even though, yes, I had friends, but when you're kind of in a situation where you're thrown into being around adults, you don't have siblings and you can't just cut up and act like a kid in certain situations. You're forced to be an adult in certain situations. I think it makes you say, well, either what did I miss out on, or did I look at things differently? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Because we all, a lot of people will ask me what was it like growing up in Texas, or how did that affect you? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know I didn't know anything else. Right. So it's whatever you grew up with, that's all you know. You can get a little perspective of it, later when you look back on it. But it's just so hard to know, you're in it. When you're in it, you can't see it. I mean, that's just physics. So
you grow up in Dallas. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Fort Worth, yeah.
Yeah.
So the book is out. Where can they go find the book? Obviously, Amazon.
Yes, you can get it on Amazon, Kindle or paperback. I'm working on an audio version that might take a month or so of trying to figuring out what to do here in this situation. So,
yeah.
But I would like to eventually bring an audiobook. But right now you can get it Kindle or paperback.
Nice.
On Amazon. You can find it through me. I have a few copies. If you're in LA, you can get it quickly through me. But if you're not, I can sign some copies and I can get it to you. But we're working on, I was supposed to have a book launch event here in LA for some industry stuff, but I was supposed to have a book signing in Atlanta. That is going to still happen. It's just going to be obviously when we're allowed to,
touch each other, be outside, not be quarantined.
Same with South Florida. And then in LA, a signing as well. So if you're in those three areas, you will be able to get a signed copy. Or if you want to order it on Amazon and keep your copy and bring it to the signing, that's a great thing too. So if you have nothing to do during the pandemic right now and you want to read it, just keep it, bring it to the signing.
Heck yeah. Anything else you want to plug? But obviously the book's huge.
Instagram, at femalelikescheese is the handle. On Facebook, you can find me, which is facebook.com is it backslash or forward slash?
Forward slash?
Forward slash. Yeah, forward slash.
Yeah.
I don't know. Facebook, it's at femalelikescheese. You'll see Lauren Peacock. And then Twitter, which my Twitter's a little rusty. It's femalelikeschz. And then I have a TikTok now.
Yeah. Are you dancing? And because everyone on TikTok seems to be dancing a lot. Is that?
My dog is dancing.
Nice.
It's just femalelikescheese. So basically anything that's femalelikescheese, you can find me at. And behind the femalelikescheese, you can read about it in the book. There is a point to the title, and a cute little story behind that. So
excellent. Well, and as someone who's read these stories, I can say they're very entertaining, they're very fun, they're very relatable, and probably make a lot of people, I think it's one of, not a lot of books make me laugh out loud, but I think that your book is really just so relatable, and you put us right in those situations that can get so crazy that we can, I've definitely laughed out loud a lot at just reading off the page. So highly recommend that book. Check it out. Female Likes Cheese, Comes with Dog, Lauren Peacock. Thank you so much for being on the show. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a good treat.
Yeah. All right. Go check out her book.